He thought he had the perfect family, until one DNA test shattered everything. Would you stay and raise the child, or walk away from the woman who betrayed you? I always thought I was living the dream. I had a stable job, a cozy little house, and a wife I loved more than life itself. We'd been together for 6 years, married for 3, and everything felt solid, unshakable. When she told me she was pregnant, I was over the moon. I spent months planning every detail, painting the nursery, assembling the crib with my own hands, and even building a little rocking chair. I wanted to be the perfect dad, the man who would never let his family down. The day our son was born, I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Holding that tiny baby in my arms, I thought nothing could ruin the pure joy that filled me. But as the months passed, a small seed of doubt started growing inside me, slowly, quietly, like a shadow creeping into the brightest room that it began with little comments from family and friends. People would smile politely and say things like, "Wow, he really doesn't look much like you, does he?" At first, I brushed it off. Babies change all the time, I told myself. But deep down, a part of me froze every time I heard those words. And then one day, while scrolling through old pictures on my wife's Facebook, I stumbled across a photo of her ex-boyfriend. My heart stopped cold. My son's eyes, his smile, even the curve of his chin. It was like staring into a smaller version of that man. From that moment on, my perfect little family didn't feel so perfect anymore. From the moment I saw that picture, I couldn't get it out of my head. It felt like something cracked inside me. Every time I looked at my son, I couldn't stop comparing him to that face burned into my memory. The resemblance wasn't vague anymore. It was striking. The shape of the nose, the same shade of hair, even the way he laughed. It wasn't like me at all that I tried to ignore it at first. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that I was overthinking because of some offhand comments and a single photo. But then, little things started to eat at me. Whenever my wife would talk about her pregnancy, she always seemed to skim over certain details. I remembered asking once about the exact date she found out, and her answer was strangely vague. She brushed it off with a smile and changed the subject. At the time, I thought nothing of it, but now, replaying those conversations in my head, I felt like she had been hiding something from me all along. What made it worse was how protective she became whenever the topic of her ex was even hinted at. If his name came up in conversation, through a mutual friend or a passing mention, she would instantly shut it down. "That was years ago, why does it matter?" She'd snap, and the conversation would end there. But it did matter. It mattered because every day I was starting to wonder if the little boy I loved more than life itself was even mine at night. When the house was quiet, and I could hear nothing but the sound of my son's soft breathing from the next room, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, my chest tight, my thoughts running wild. Was I raising another man's child without even knowing it? Was the life I built nothing more than a lie I was too blind to see? The doubt wasn't just eating at me anymore. It was consuming me whole. The more I tried to silence my suspicions, the louder they screamed back at me. It was like living in a constant state of paranoia. I found myself scrutinizing every small feature of my son, his eyes, his jawline, even the way he tilted his head when he was thinking. None of it seemed to belong to me. Instead, it all pointed back to him, the ex I never wanted to think about. One evening, while scrolling through old photos on my wife's social media, I stumbled upon something that nearly made my heart stop. There was a picture from just over 4 years ago, around the exact time she would have conceived. She was at a party, and standing right next to her, with his arm draped casually around her shoulders, was him. Both of them smiling, looking a little too comfortable for people who were supposedly long over. The caption? "One last fun night with old friends." I stared at that heart emoji until my vision blurred. One last fun night. Was that the night everything happened? Was that the night my entire future was rewritten without me even knowing? I didn't say anything to her right away. Instead, I bottled it up, trying to act normal while the storm inside me raged louder every day. I went to work, played with my son, had dinner with my wife, all the while feeling like I was walking through a carefully constructed illusion. But it was the little inconsistencies that started stacking against her. When I asked about that night, casually, pretending like I'd just stumbled upon the post, she brushed it off. "Oh, it was nothing. Just a quick get-together." She wouldn't look me in the eye. She never could when she lied. And then there were the times she would dodge questions about the early months of our relationship, saying things like, Why are you so hung up on the past? We're happy now, isn't that enough? It wasn't enough. Not anymore. Because every time I looked at my son, I felt love tangled with fear, pride tangled with betrayal. My life no longer felt like mine. It felt like a ticking time bomb, waiting for the truth to explode. The idea of a DNA test crept into my mind like a shadow I couldn't shake. At first, I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was paranoia, that I was overthinking, that my love for my son should be enough to quiet these doubts. But the more I tried to push it away, the stronger it pulled me in. Every small moment seemed to feed the storm. When my son laughed, it wasn't just his laughter. It was his laughter, the echo of another man I hated. When he held my hand, I felt warmth, but also a pang of fear. Like I was grasping a future that might not belong to me. I started researching paternity tests late at night, lying in bed with the glow of my phone hidden under the blanket while my wife slept beside me. There were so many options, at-home kits, lab tests, ones you could do without anyone ever knowing. I found myself clicking through websites, imagining what it would feel like to send in a swab and wait for the results that could either set me free or completely destroy me. But then came the moral questions. What if the test confirmed my worst fears? Could I still look at my son the same way? Could I bear the weight of knowing that the bond one thought was unbreakable was based on a lie? And if it wasn't true, if the boy was really mine, would I be able to live with the guilt of doubting him in the first place? Some nights, I stared at my wife while she slept peacefully, wondering how many secrets she was hiding beneath that calm exterior. Did she know? Did she suspect that I had begun to unravel the threads of her carefully woven story? The dilemma consumed me, love for my son versus the desperate need for truth. And the more I wrestled with it, the more it became clear, sooner or later, I would have to choose between protecting my heart or tearing it wide open to finally know that it happened on an ordinary afternoon. One of those moments that seem so trivial at first, but end up changing everything. I was sorting through an old box of papers in the closet, stuff we had thrown together when we moved into this house. Receipts, random bills, old photos, things we never organized properly. Buried in the mess, I found an envelope with my wife's handwriting on it. At first, I thought it was just another stack of bills, but when I opened it, I froze. Inside were hospital documents, medical records from the time of my son's birth. I sat on the floor, reading every line, my hands trembling. That's when I saw it. The admission dates didn't match the timeline my wife had always told me. She had sworn our son came a few weeks earlier than expected, that it had been a surprise because she wasn't due yet. But the paperwork showed something different. Her due date was later, and the delivery happened right on schedule. My mind started racing. Why would she lie about something so small? Unless she had been covering up when she got pregnant in the first place. The walls seemed to close in on me. I could hear my son playing in the living room, laughing at some cartoon, completely unaware that his father was sitting in the closet questioning the very foundation of his life. It was like finding the first crack in a dam. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Suddenly, every detail I had ignored came flooding back. Her nervous glances during pregnancy, how she never wanted me at some of the early appointments, how vague she had been whenever I asked too many questions. This wasn't just doubt anymore. This was the beginning of something darker, something real. And for the first time, I felt the ground beneath me start to break apart. The envelope with hospital papers wouldn't leave my mind. I shoved it back into the box, but it was like the words burned themselves into my brain. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that maybe it was a clerical mistake, or maybe I just didn't understand the medical terms. But deep down, I knew something was off, and my wife had been hiding it from me. A few nights later, while she was asleep, I couldn't resist. I went back to the closet and started digging deeper into that same box. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would wake her. And then, I found it. A small, worn-out card tucked between old bank statements. At first, I thought it was just another receipt, but when I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was a congratulatory card, signed by her ex. The man she had sworn was out of her life for good, the one she said she barely even spoke to anymore. The message was simple, almost casual. Can't wait to meet the little one. You'll be a great mom. The date on the card made my blood run cold. It was sent just weeks before our son was born. I sat there, gripping the card, my hands shaking. Why would her ex send this? Why would he even know about the pregnancy? let alone expect to be part of the child's life. Unless, unless he believed the child was his dot, I suddenly felt sick, like the air was sucked out of the room. Every detail that had seemed harmless before now turned into a puzzle piece fitting into the worst picture imaginable. Her distance during those months. The way she flinched whenever I brought up baby names. The strange look she gave me when people said our son looked just like me. For the first time, I wasn't just doubting her. I was starting to believe that the child I had raised, the boy I had loved with every fiber of my being, might not even be mine. That I couldn't sleep after finding that card. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every moment of the last few years. The hospital papers, the congratulatory card from her ex, my wife's constant defensiveness whenever I brought up anything about trust, by morning. I knew I couldn't live with what if. I needed the truth. I did something I never thought I'd do. I quietly scheduled a DNA test. It wasn't as simple as TV shows make it look. You can't just walk in and demand answers. I had to order a home kit first, and every step of it made me feel like I was betraying my son. Swabbing his cheek while he laughed and thought it was a silly game broke something in me. He had no idea why his dad was trembling, why my eyes were red. When the kit was sealed and mailed off, I felt both relief and guilt. Relief that I'd soon have answers. Guilt that I was questioning the very bond one swore would never be broken. But the hardest part wasn't the waiting. It was my wife. She noticed something in my eyes. She kept asking why I was so quiet, why I wouldn't look at her during dinner, why I'd leave the room when she tried to cuddle on the couch. At first, I brushed it off as stress from work. But she didn't buy it. She grew sharper, more suspicious. One night, she cornered me in the kitchen. Her arms crossed, her eyes narrowed. She asked if I was hiding something. The irony nearly choked me. I wanted to scream, to throw the card and the hospital papers in her face and demand the truth right then and there. But I held back. I told myself to wait for the results before blowing my family apart. Still, her tone unsettled me. It wasn't concern, it was fear. Like, deep down, she knew what I was about to uncover. And in that moment, as I looked at her standing there in our kitchen, I felt more like a stranger in my own marriage than a husband. The week waiting for those results felt like the longest of my life. Every day was a test of patience. Every night a battle with my own mind. At work, I'd catch myself staring blankly at my computer screen, my thoughts spiraling into dark scenarios. What if the boy I had raised, the boy who called me dad, wasn't mine? What if my entire marriage was built on a lie? At home, things were worse. My wife seemed to sense the shift in me, and instead of easing my anxiety, she fueled it. She was suddenly overly attentive, watching me closely, almost nervously. She'd ask where I was going even if I was just stepping outside to take out the trash. She started checking my phone at night, thinking I didn't notice. It was as if she thought I was the one hiding something. Her behavior pushed me to the edge. Every innocent moment twisted itself into suspicion. When she smiled too sweetly, I wondered if it was guilt behind her eyes. When she hugged me, I felt a hollowness I couldn't ignore. Even when she tucked our son into bed and kissed his forehead, I found myself searching his features, desperate for proof of myself in him. The house became a battlefield of unspoken tension. Conversations grew shorter, meals felt like interrogations. She accused me of being distant, but I couldn't bring myself to explain why. Not until I had the paper in my hand. The waiting gnawed at me so badly that I began to imagine the worst-case scenario. I pictured myself opening the envelope, reading the words, "Not the father," and my entire life collapsing in that single moment. By the sixth day, I was barely holding it together. I was snapping at coworkers, avoiding friends, and lying awake until sunrise. My chest felt heavy, like I was carrying a secret that might crush me before I ever saw the truth. And then, on the seventh day, the package finally arrived. I held it in my hands, my palms sweaty, my heart racing so loud I thought it might burst out of my chest. It felt like the weight of the world rested inside that sealed envelope. That was the moment I realized, no matter what it said, my life would never be the same again. I sat alone at the kitchen table, the envelope lying in front of me like a ticking time bomb. The morning light streamed through the blinds, cutting sharp lines across the surface. It felt almost symbolic, truth waiting to slice my life into before and after. My hands trembled as I reached for it. I couldn't remember the last time I had been so terrified. My breath was shallow. every inhale catching in my throat. The silence of the house pressed down on me, broken only by the distant hum of the refrigerator. For a long time, I just stared at the seal, my mind running in circles. If I opened it, and the results said I wasn't the father, how could I ever look at my wife the same way again? How could I look at my son, who had been the center of my world since the day he was born? Would I walk away? Could I even bring myself to leave him, even if he wasn't mine by blood? And then there was the other possibility, that the test would confirm what I'd feared all along, but she would deny it, twist the truth, gaslight me until I began to question even the evidence in my hands. That I pressed my palms against the envelope, almost as if I could absorb the truth through the paper itself. My heartbeat thundered, my vision narrowed, and I forced myself to tear it open. The sound of ripping paper echoed like gunfire in the quiet kitchen that I unfolded the single sheet inside. My eyes darted across the lines of clinical jargon, searching desperately for the one sentence that mattered. And when I found it, the words seemed to burn themselves into my mind. Probability of paternity, 0%. The world tilted. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might vomit. My entire body went cold, as though someone had drained the blood from my veins. The boy I had loved, raised, and called my son for years wasn't mine, but the shock didn't even have time to settle before another wave hit me. The boy wasn't just not mine. He wasn't even hers. The test results revealed something that made my entire reality unravel even further. My vision blurred as I reread the line again and again, convinced I must have misunderstood. But the cold, clinical wording left no room for doubt. Not only was I excluded as the biological father, the test also revealed that the child wasn't related to his supposed mother either. I froze, the paper rattling in my hands, sweat gathering at my temples. How could that even be possible? A mix-up at the hospital? A switched baby? Or something darker? Had she adopted him in secret and lied to me from the very start? Every memory I had with that little boy flashed through my head in a chaotic stream. His first steps across the living room floor, the way he called me dad, with absolute trust in his voice, the times I'd carried him on my shoulders at the park. None of it matched what I was staring at now. It all felt like a stolen life, borrowed from someone else's truth. I leaned back in the chair, clutching the page like it was about to slip from my grip. My chest heaved with anger, disbelief, and an ache so deep it felt like my ribs were splintering from the inside. If the boy wasn't hers, and he wasn't mine, then whose child was he? The question thundered in my skull. I felt betrayed on a level I hadn't even thought possible. Not only had my wife shattered my trust, she had built our entire marriage on a foundation of lies that now threatened to bury me alive. And in that moment, as the paper shook between my fingers, I realized the truth wasn't just devastating. It was dangerous. Because once I confronted her, there would be no going back. I waited for her to come home that evening. The DNA results spread out on the kitchen table like a trap. My stomach churned, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might give me away before she even walked through the door. When she finally entered, cheerful as ever, setting her purse down and humming some mindless tune, I couldn't even recognize the woman standing in front of me. Everything about her seemed rehearsed now, like I was watching an actress step into a role she'd been playing for years. I didn't waste time. I slid the paper across the table toward her, my eyes locked on hers. She picked it up casually, but as her eyes scanned the page, the color drained from her face. Her hands trembled, the mask slipping for the first time in months, maybe years. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, I broke it. My voice was steady, though it felt like acid in my throat. "If he's not mine," I said slowly, "and he's not yours, then who does he belong to? And why the hell have you been lying to me?" Her lips parted, but no words came. For a long moment she just stared at me, like a cornered animal trying to calculate whether to run or attack. And then, almost imperceptibly, her expression shifted, not to shame, not to regret, but to something colder. Defiance. That was when I realized the lies weren't mistakes. They were deliberate. She had been protecting something, or someone, all along. She slammed the paper back onto the table as if by force she could erase what was written on it. Her eyes darted around the room, anywhere but at me. Finally, she muttered, her voice shaking but laced with anger. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." That one sentence cut deeper than the test results. Not supposed to find out. So she had always known. The betrayal stung like fire. She began pacing, her hands tangled in her hair. "I was trying to protect you," she said, her tone defensive, desperate. "Protect us." I stood there frozen, every nerve in my body screaming for answers. "Protect us from what?" I demanded. My voice was louder now, trembling with rage. "From the truth? From the fact that this child isn't even yours or mine. Whose son is he?" Her face twisted, caught between fear and fury. For a moment, she looked like she might break down and sob. But instead, she spat the words like poison. "He's my sister's kid. She couldn't raise him. She begged me. And I said yes. I thought we could make it work. I thought you'd love him like your own." The room seemed to tilt. My knees almost buckled. My entire life, the late nights with a crying baby, the moments of pride, the bond one thought was real, all of it built on a lie. And she hadn't just lied once. She had lied every single day. Lied when she let me believe I was a father. Lied when she let me dream about a future that never truly existed. Her tears finally came then, but they felt like salt on my wounds. She whispered through sobs, "I just didn't want you to leave me. I knew if you found out, you'd never stay." She was right. At that moment, I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same again. That I sank into the chair, my head in my hands, while she cried quietly across the room. My chest felt crushed under the weight of betrayal. Every memory, from the first time I held the boy, to his first steps, to the nights when he clung to me and wouldn't let go, all came flooding back. My heart screamed that he was mine, but my mind screamed louder that I had been played like a fool. She kept whispering through her tears, "You are his dad in every way that matters. Biology doesn't change that." Her words should have comforted me, but instead they felt like chains, like another attempt to trap me in this twisted lie she had spun. Why thoughts spiraled. If I stayed, could I ever trust her again? Could I look at her without remembering how she let me believe a lie, day after day? Could I even raise this child knowing he wasn't really mine? Not by blood, not by truth? But then another thought stabbed at me. The boy, innocent, blameless. He had no idea about the lies, the deception, the betrayal. To him, I was his father. The thought of walking away, of watching his little face look for me one day and realize I wasn't coming back, tore at my soul. That I felt like I was being split in two. One half wanted to storm out, slam the door, and never look back. The other half wanted to stay for him, even if it meant living a lie that would eat away at me every single day. And then, like a cruel echo, her words replayed in my head. "I knew if you found out, you'd never stay." Maybe she was right. Maybe that choice had already been made the moment the truth came out. The house was quiet that night, but my mind was louder than ever. I sat in the living room long after she went to bed, the glow of the street lamp outside flickering through the blinds, casting broken stripes of light across the floor. My chest felt like it was being torn apart, every breath heavier than the last. That on the coffee table sat the DNA results, that single sheet of paper that had shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. I picked it up again, even though I had memorized every word. Exclusion of paternity. Cold. Clinical. Final. It wasn't just ink on a page. It was a dagger driven into the core of my being. From down the hall, I could hear the boy stir in his sleep, his small voice mumbling in a dream. It made my heart ache. To him, I was dad. The one who read bedtime stories, who bandaged scraped knees, who cheered the loudest at his soccer games. Nothing on that paper could erase those years. But when I pictured the future, birthdays, graduations, first heartbreaks, I felt the shadow of the lie looming over it all. Could I live like that, knowing I was building my life on a foundation of deception? Could I look into his eyes and see the reflection of a man who had betrayed me? The truth was crushing. No matter how much love I had for that child, every moment moving forward would be poisoned by the knowledge that his very existence in my life was born out of her betrayal. I felt anger boiling in my veins again. Not at him, never at him, but at her. She had stolen my right to choose. She had forced me into a role without giving me the truth, and in doing so, she had shattered not just our relationship, but my sense of self. That night, I realized there was no easy path. If I stayed, I'd drown in resentment. If I left, I'd break the heart of a boy who thought of me as his whole world. The question that haunted me, the one that refused to let me rest, was this: was it better to live a painful truth or a comforting lie? The morning after felt colder than any winter I'd ever known. Not because of the weather, but because of the weight of the decision I knew I had to make. I didn't sleep. My body was in the bed, but my mind was trapped in that endless loop of what ifs and whys. When she walked into the kitchen, acting as if nothing had changed, something inside me finally snapped into place. Her casual smile, the way she reached for the coffee maker. It was like she thought the storm would just pass if she pretended hard enough. But storms don't just pass when they've torn the house down. I told her I couldn't do it anymore. My voice was calm, but every word was soaked in pain. I told her I couldn't live a life built on lies, that every time I looked at our son, I would be reminded of her betrayal. She tried to argue, begged me not to leave, swore that he needed me. And God, it killed me to think of him crying out for me, wondering why I was gone. But I wasn't walking away from him. I was walking away from her. The truth was, she had already destroyed the family the moment she decided to hide the truth. I was just acknowledging the wreckage that I promised her I wouldn't abandon the boy emotionally, that I'd always care for him, always be there if he needed me. But I couldn't stay under the same roof, pretending we were a family. Not anymore. Yes, I packed my things. I glanced one last time at the small pair of sneakers by the door, his favorite ones with the scuffed sides. My chest tightened so hard I thought I'd break. But sometimes, love means making the hardest choice. Even if it rips you apart. I walked out of that house with nothing but a suitcase and a heart full of scars. And as the door closed behind me, I realized that betrayal doesn't just change your life. It changes who you are. The question that still lingers, the one I'll probably carry with me for the rest of my life, is this: am I the villain for leaving, or just a man finally choosing truth over lies? Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. We post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.